this is a true story. I promise. This is not, a Texas tall tale. I'm perfectly capable of that. I took this glider out, and I threw it, and I was just, and the guy that I was with was my drummer, and his name was Smithson Mulkey Goodlet III, so I couldn't possibly make that up. And I took the glider out and threw it, and it does that loop-de-loop thing, and then it came down, and I saw it. It touched a little tiny flower, and then it came up, and it stalled, and the wind was coming straight out of the north. It came up and it stalled, and then it went down, and then it went a little higher, and then it went down, and it went a little higher, and it went down, and it went a little bit higher. And I said, Smithson, look at this thing. It went down, and it went a little bit higher, and it never tailed off left or right. It just kept bobbing and kept going up. And we followed it out to the very north side of town in our cars, and it never came down.
It's still up there.
It's still up there. And so that moment, gave me a sense of, well, anything can happen. I've seen it. And so, I've written books, I've made films, I've crafted policy, I've built or caused to have built hundreds, really thousands of megawatts of wind and thousands of megawatts of solar. I've created organizations, you name it, I've pretty much done it all. Why? I mean, what makes this happen? And I can say, well, maybe because I'm a Virgo, I'm actually a double Virgo, by the way. And the sun is in Virgo tonight, and it's a new moon, so this is double Virgo tonight. So this is the reason you get to hear this whole story, because I decided I would tell you just about everything, that you don't need to know about me. But the reason is because my mother used to say, when I was really young, she would say, Michael, you're not going to be able to change the world. You can't change the world. And I go, all right, whatever. And then about the last 10 years of her life, after we'd put up, she couldn't drive through West Texas without seeing thousands of windmills. And she would tell her bridge club ladies, she said, I used to tell Michael that he couldn't change the world, but he is. And then I look and I think, but are we really changing? Are we changing the world? And some of our leaders choose to disregard the truth as we know it. And we know it's the truth. I mean, we can listen to some of the leaders. We know they're saying they're telling a different story for a different reason. And the important thing is, what is that reason? And so I've been in this fight for 44 years. And I'm not the kind of guy that goes like, well, we got to give up because we're not getting anywhere. Because besides the 80-20 rule, I also believe in the fact that that every grain of sand, every pebble, everything you do on the right side, when you have a scale, the scale's like this, and you keep doing it one step at a time, one pebble at a time, one grain of sand at a time, and then one day it changes. And it doesn't change like slowly. All of a sudden it just changes, and the scale goes the other way. And you go like, well, golly, I didn't know that was going to happen like that. But it's like the ledge breaks off. Something, it gets to a critical mass and the change happens. Then we have today, I saw the United Nations, the new United Nations, General Antonio Guterres, warned that, did you see me this story? Yeah, warned that the world is facing a direct, an existential threat and must rapidly shift from dependence on fossil fuels by 2020 to prevent runaway climate change. He called the crisis urgent and decried the lack of global leadership. Climate change is moving faster than we are, Guterres said on Monday. We need to put the brake on deadly greenhouse gases and drive climate action. And now we're running the pants off of our coal plant. Right here in the heart of green in the most progressive community in the state of Texas. And it's just to, as I told the mayor last week when we had breakfast, and this is just to make maybe 10 or 15 million dollars, if that. You think about it, Austin Energy's got right at $700 million in the bank right now, and we're averaging 30 to 40 to 50 million dollars a year in profit beyond what we need to be making, because we're trying to get up to all these reserves. You know, that's one way that we can tell folks why we need to store up a bunch of money, and that's true in a normal utility universe. You know, you do need to get a bunch of money. If you got a bunch of old plants and you're going to close some plants down, you do need to come up with some money. So we're running the pants off this thing. I brought the actual production data here, but basically we've gone from about 3 terawatt hours a year. We're a 13 terawatt hour system. We've gone from 3 terawatt hour system back up to 4. So our emissions, even though we built, 350 megawatt solar plants, and we did some more wind and all this other stuff, our emissions have gone up because we are now producing about 15% more energy than we consume. And so when I met with the mayor last Wednesday, I said, this is hypocritical, because we can't. I mean, there's some folks, and there's some of them are on the Electric Utility Commission with me. Some of them think, well, we got to maximize our profits, and I'm going, well, no, we don't. And so I don't think there's votes on the council to run this plant, but the problem is it's not the council, and that's why I had a hard time kind of coming up with what I was going to talk about tonight. Because the problem is, and I know this from being inside Austin Energy, is that we're 50-50 on plant 1 and 2, but then LCRA's got plant 3 that they own by themselves. And so basically we are a little stepchild in that operation. And the guy that used to be on our management committee for Austin Energy, he would office right down beside me, and he'd come back from a coal plant meeting, and he'd literally be throwing stuff against the walls, because he was just saying, it's like they take a candy bar and break it off, and they give us the short one every time, and if there's a bill, they give us 50% of it, even though he said, we just get ripped off all the time. So we've got a partner there that we really can't get to. If they want to run it at 80% capacity, which is what they're doing right now. They're running it at 80% capacity. So it's a touchy issue, and I've got a solution here, or at least a direction that I would like for you guys to go down. But I just want to finish by saying that, you guys are great. I appreciate I love the fact that you wear those dang shirts, I mean, it just tickles me to death. And so keep bugging the elected officials, keep bugging me, keep bugging, my other commissioners. Don't stop, because every little grain counts. But I've been dealing with this a long time, and I was kind of like Al Gore at the beginning. I thought, well, you just show an intelligent person the science, and you say, this is what's happening. We're burning carbon, which means we're taking an oxygen molecule and attaching it to the carbon, and we're making, there's 2 molecules actually, and we're attaching it, and it creates CO2. That's part of the process that we're doing. You can also say oxidize instead of burn, and this is what we're doing. And then I would do a thing, this is years ago, this is 25, 30 years ago. I'd say, how many people in this room think that CO2 is 80% of the atmosphere? Half of the room goes up. Half of the room goes up on 80, right? How many people think that carbon dioxide is 16%? Pretty much the other half goes up after that. No, how many people think it's 3%? Nobody left to vote now, you know. And I go, no, that's argon, you know. And I go, where we are right now, you know, and this is, I used to say that, where we are right now is at 372 parts per million. And of course we're over 400 parts, 405 to 410, depending on what season it is right now. And I always thought that if you just, I don't care if you're a Republican, or a communist, or an Irishman, you know, if you show them what's happening, they're going to go, well,
Of course we got to fix it.
we've got to do something. But I dropped the line about Cahutek, Comet Cahutek, because if we as a society, if the scientists were to come out today and say, there is a comet coming and we have 30 years to prepare for it, I wonder what we would do at this point, because climate change, the people who don't accept climate change, they're not as dumb as you think. In fact, they're not dumb at all, because climate change is going to change everything. Everything. It's going to change the way we eat. It's going to change the way we drive. It's going to change the way we build our homes. It's going to change the way that we insist that everybody works. You know, really only about 5% of us need to work. I mean, if you really want to look, you know, at the way the society should be designed, it will change everything. And the people who reject it because they go, this looks like the end of a lot of things I love. Capitalism.
Bingo.
Just keep going, you know. Changes everything. And so we wonder, you know, the scariest thing I saw the other day on MSNBC. So, you know, MSNBC. And they pointed out that if you talk about climate change on TV, your numbers go down. People don't want to know about that bad of news. They don't want to hear it. And so even people who want to talk about climate change, the producer comes up and says, well, that was a really nice little chat you had about climate change, but you know, we lost 10 points while you were talking about it, you know. A bunch of people went over to Fox while you were talking about it. And so we have some really important built in the cake things, so that have to be managed in some sort of way. And once again, you know, I think that, like I said in the book, they're going to push it off. We're going to push it off. Part of it's our fault, because, you know, if a child comes into their dad, if the child comes in out to the fields and tells his dad that the house is burning down, you know, child's pretty excited about that. You know, there's no way that you're not going to believe that child, because he's like, Daddy, 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 the house is on fire, you know. But what we do is that we go like, well, you know, the house is on fire. And go like, no, it's not. And you go like, well, yeah, it is. We don't talk like that child. And I don't know when the right time it will be to run out to the fields and get Daddy and say, Daddy, 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 the house is on fire. Because it is. But nobody's going to respond to us until the right time comes. And I think it will be probably within the next 5 or 10 years, and we will see this scale move. And I thank you all so much for helping that happen. One step because you know how to eat an elephant, right? One bite at a time.
Maybe Florence will help it this weekend.
Who knows? But I mean, what a horrible position to be put in
I know.
to hope for horrible things. I mean, that's a terrible way to be. So what you guys do is the right thing, and that is that it's one step at a time, one pebble at a time, and ultimately things will change. And I really appreciate you guys for doing it. I really thank you very much. See, I've never given that speech before.